March 30th, 2025, Jacksonville, Florida, 3:20 in the morning. A 911 dispatcher gets a call from someone in an apartment complex off Arlington Expressway. A man's outside, stumbling around, disoriented. His leg and arm are covered in blood. When officers roll up, the guy's barely making sense. Cops figure it's probably a late-night fight, maybe a robbery gone bad. Standard stuff. But then something on the ground catches their attention. Blood. Not scattered drops. A continuous trail, leading straight from the parking lot, up a staircase, right to an apartment door. They follow it. Inside, it's dead quiet. And on the floor, they find the body of a 30-year-old woman. As paramedics work on the injured man outside, one question hangs over everything. Who was this woman to him? And why did he walk away and leave her behind that door? If you're new to this channel, we cover true crime documentaries built entirely on court records, police reports, and verified facts. No speculation, just the truth. Drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe, because we're covering cases like this every single week. To understand who this woman really was, we have to rewind 3 years and go all the way back to Cuba. Because this story didn't start in Jacksonville. It started with a woman who crossed an entire continent chasing a better life, and a reunion she spent years fighting for. One that would end in the last place she ever expected. Let's stick to the facts. Her name was Yanelis Casales, 30 years old, originally from Santiago de Cuba. Think about what it actually takes for someone to leave everything behind, walk away from family, home, everything familiar, and start over with absolutely nothing. In 2022, Yanelis took on one of the hardest migration routes there is. She crossed into Nicaragua, made her way through Honduras and Guatemala, and traveled the full length of Mexico. This wasn't some easy trip. It was exhausting, dangerous, and demanded everything she had, every single day. And she made it. Her final stop, Jacksonville, Florida. That choice made sense. Jacksonville has a large Cuban community, which makes it a lot easier for newcomers to find their footing and build a life in the U.S. Yanelis didn't try to dodge immigration authorities either. She followed the process the right way and was granted legal status under Form I-220A. For anyone unfamiliar, that's a form that allows an asylum applicant to legally live and work in the U.S. while their case moves through immigration court. Once her paperwork came through, Yanelis got to work building her new life. Based on what she shared online, her schedule was relentless. Long work shifts, followed by serious discipline in the gym. She regularly posted workout videos, encouraging other women to push themselves. And through all of it, she consistently sent part of every paycheck back home to her parents in Cuba. A lot of the time, when you dig into a criminal case, the people involved kept such a low profile that piecing their life together is a challenge. This case was the opposite. Yanelis had a clear plan for her life, and her entire digital footprint showed it. Steady growth, real stability, a future she was building one step at a time. One of the biggest signs of that progress? She bought a car. In the US, owning a car is a real marker of independence. She proudly posted photos of it online just 1 week before she died. A steady job, financial independence. Every sign pointed to a woman who had finally moved past just surviving. But there was one major part of her life that had followed her all the way from Cuba, and it wasn't going anywhere. That was Carlos Aldana, 38 years old. Their relationship went back long before Yanelis ever left Cuba. By the time she'd started her new life in America, they'd already been together more than 6 years. This could have been a simple story of two people eventually reuniting in the States. Instead, everything changed because of one criminal case. While Yanelis was building her new life, Carlos went back to Cuba, and that's where local authorities took him into custody. Here's an important detail. There's no publicly available documentation explaining exactly what charges led to his conviction in Cuba. No court records, no charging documents on record in the U.S. What is confirmed, through multiple family members, is that he did serve time behind bars. At that point, the relationship shifted into something different. A long, difficult, practical phase. Supporting someone incarcerated in another country isn't cheap. Legal fees, international money transfers, covering basic needs from thousands of miles away. Nearly all of that landed on Yanelis. The money she earned through those exhausting shifts didn't just cover her own bills. A big chunk of it went straight toward Carlos's legal costs and his expenses in prison. In private conversations with close friends, Yanelis admitted how hard it was, trying to hold a relationship together with someone serving time while living an ocean away. The constant waiting for prison phone calls, the emotional weight of being the woman waiting on a convicted partner, it wore on her. But she never once considered ending things. If anything, she was preparing for the day he'd finally arrive, making sure everything would already be in place so he wouldn't have to start from zero. Here's something you notice a lot studying cases like this: what's sometimes called the rescuer pattern. One person gives everything, the other just receives. In this relationship, that dynamic was crystal clear. Yanelis carried the entire financial weight, covering Carlos's survival while he sat in prison. And the most heartbreaking part? Every sacrifice she made was in service of bringing their reunion closer, without ever fully realizing who exactly she was preparing to welcome into her home. Eventually, Carlos's release came through, and getting permission to enter the U.S. became just a matter of time. That day finally arrived on March 16, 2025. After 3 years and 1 month of waiting, his plane touched down at Jacksonville International Airport. Yanelis was there, surrounded by family, holding 5 heart-shaped balloons. One of them read, "Welcome back." She recorded the whole thing on her phone and posted it almost immediately. The caption said it all. 3 years and 1 month. We finally made it. Thank you, God. This wasn't a woman broken down by hardship. This was someone who genuinely believed the hardest chapter of her life was finally over. Carlos walked through the front door of the apartment on Arlington Expressway for the first time, into a life Yanelis had built entirely on her own. She showed him everything: her friends, her routine, and of course, the car she'd bought just days earlier, living proof of everything she'd accomplished while he was locked up thousands of miles away. The most important chapter of their life together had just begun. This is where almost every case like this becomes deceptive. When we look back at situations like this, we naturally search for warning signs: loud arguments in the hallway, angry posts online, strange behavior, anything that hints at what's coming. But real life rarely follows that script. For exactly 2 weeks, the apartment complex stayed completely quiet. Duval County incident logs were spotless. During those 14 days, not one neighbor called emergency services to report shouting, arguments, or any kind of disturbance coming from that apartment. No police reports tied to that address. Carlos never drew attention from patrol officers. On the surface, he looked like someone settling into his new life in America just fine. That kind of picture can mislead even experienced investigators. From the outside, it looked like Yanelis's plan had worked exactly the way she'd hoped. She'd helped him through serious legal trouble, brought him into a stable new life, and now they were simply enjoying the life they'd fought so hard to build. No visible conflict, no obvious warning signs, just the quiet routine of 2 people finally reunited after years apart. But that silence wasn't a sign that everything was fine. It was pressure building behind closed doors. The illusion held for exactly 14 days. Their new life together came to an abrupt end in the early morning hours of March 30th. To understand exactly how it unraveled, we have to rely on something completely impartial: the building's security cameras. Just after 3 a.m., the motion sensor on one of the apartment doors wakes from standby. The smart doorbell starts recording automatically, switching to black and white night vision. Carlos slowly comes into view. The footage documents his condition in real time. He moves down the hallway with slow, unsteady steps. Large drops of blood fall from a severe wound on his leg, hitting the light-colored tile. The same trail investigators would later follow straight to the apartment door. He's breathing heavy. He stops in the empty stairwell. Then, in Spanish, he says a single sentence. The doorbell's microphone captures every word. Once translated, there's no ambiguity. He says he killed her. Flat voice, no tears, no panic. The noise in the hallway wakes a neighbor. A nearby door opens, and a man steps out to see what's going on. The moment he hears Carlos calmly admit what happened, he freezes. can't even respond for a second. Then instinct kicks in. He tells him he's crazy and immediately steps back inside. The footage makes it clear. He wants nothing to do with what just happened. He doesn't offer help. He doesn't approach. He just shuts the door. Faced with that, Carlos realizes he can't stay there. He turns from the camera and slowly makes his way down the concrete stairwell toward the parking lot. In modern investigations, evidence like this can shut down almost any defense strategy before it even starts. When there's no living witness, defense attorneys often try to argue an unknown third party was involved, or that an intruder broke in, or that it was self-defense. None of those arguments survive here. A small camera mounted above a neighbor's door caught a direct, unmistakable admission. Investigators didn't need weeks of circumstantial evidence or lab results. The suspect had already told them exactly what happened. From there, it became a matter of locating him within the complex and taking him into custody. Once he was detained, crime scene investigators moved into the apartment. Standard protocol kicked in immediately. A thorough check of every entry point for signs of forced entry. That's one of the most basic rules in any investigation. The team checked the door locks, window frames, vents, balcony latches. Everything was intact. No broken glass, no damaged frames, no pry marks, nothing suggesting anyone forced their way inside. That single detail eliminated any theory involving an outside intruder. Whoever was responsible hadn't broken in. He was already there, legally living in that apartment, with full access to everything inside. Next, the medical examiner conducted the initial exam, and those first findings gave investigators a foundation that would be extremely difficult to challenge later in court. The official report documented that Yanelis had sustained 13 sharp force injuries. Forensic experts can read a lot into a number like that. This wasn't one impulsive strike during an argument. It wasn't an act of excessive self-defense either. Case after case shows that this level of repeated force points to something else entirely. An extreme, uncontrolled outburst, far beyond what would have been needed to cause her death. And that's what makes this case so unsettling. Put the two facts side by side. On one hand, a completely clean record. Not one complaint, not one call, nothing during those 14 days they lived together. On the other hand, that same apartment became the scene of an extraordinarily violent attack. Most cases like this are preceded by a long, documented pattern. Escalating threats, controlling behavior, earlier incidents. A trail that eventually reaches law enforcement. That's not what happened here. Every warning system stayed silent, right up until the very end. The escalation went from nothing to its absolute peak in a matter of minutes. Meanwhile, crime scene technicians kept documenting everything inside the apartment, measuring blood stain patterns, photographing every disturbed object, collecting every piece of physical evidence. To anyone else, the room would look like chaos. To forensic specialists, it's a precise map. Once those patterns were analyzed, they revealed almost exactly how the attack unfolded, second by second. The shape of the stains, the direction of the spatter, the position of every displaced item. At that point, the investigation didn't need assumptions anymore. It followed the same laws of physics every case eventually comes down to. Everything happened inside the confined space of that apartment. The compact layout left almost no room for someone caught off guard to retreat. Any chance to create distance vanished almost instantly. Yanelis was trapped between the walls and the furniture, with no real path to the hallway or a phone. This is where investigators reached a clear, evidence-based explanation for Carlos's own injuries. When someone delivers a rapid series of strikes with a blade, under that level of physical exertion and stress, the handle becomes coated with fluid and dangerously slick. At some point during another forceful motion, his grip slipped and his hand slid forward onto the blade itself. That's the deep laceration on his hand, the one doctors later closed with stitches. The severe cut on his leg follows the same pattern. When someone's cornered, they fight back however they can, arms up, pushing, kicking, trying to create any distance possible. In that kind of chaos, the path of a blade becomes unpredictable. One uncontrolled motion deflected off something, and he ended up cutting his own leg badly. The pain and blood loss forced him to stop almost immediately. He backed away. Yanelis remained on the floor. By that point, there was no longer any realistic chance for medical help to make a difference. Carlos made his way to the apartment door. Blood soaked through his pants and down onto his shoes, leaving the same trail across the tile that police would follow hours later. He unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway. And that's where every piece of the timeline finally connects, explaining exactly how that blood trail led responding officers straight from the parking lot to her door. 17 minutes after the doorbell camera captured his spoken admission, Carlos was taken into custody. Officers escorted him to a local hospital, where doctors treated the same wounds we just walked through. Once treated, he was transported directly to the Duval County Jail. A judge ordered him held without bond, while the case moved forward. This is where solid forensic evidence runs straight into the slower pace of the legal system. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office formally charged Carlos Aldana with second-degree murder. That distinction matters. Under Florida law, second-degree murder means prosecutors believe the death was intentional, but without proof of a premeditated plan. That charge sparked outrage almost immediately. Yanelis' close friend, along with dozens of members of Jacksonville's Cuban community, gathered outside the county courthouse, demanding the charge be upgraded to first-degree murder, a charge that could carry life in prison, or worse, if there's a conviction. Their argument centered on the physical evidence. 13 knife wounds, they said, couldn't reasonably be explained as a brief emotional outburst. To them, the legal classification didn't come close to reflecting the severity of what actually happened. While that legal fight played out, another difficult process was underway. Yanelis' father, still in Santiago de Cuba, made one public request through local media. He wanted his daughter's body brought home so she could be laid to rest in Cuba. International repatriation is expensive, so supporters set up a fundraiser. In a short amount of time, nearly 300 individual donors raised more than $15,000, covering the full cost of bringing her home. But even that final journey wasn't without complications. During the funeral, a mistake added one more painful chapter to an already devastating story. The funeral home miscalculated the dimensions of the crypt, and when the casket arrived at the cemetery, it didn't fit. Video circulated online showing workers loading the casket back onto the truck and leaving the cemetery. Yanelis' family was left waiting for hours while staff worked to fix the error. I want to close this case not with speculation, but with a fact worth sitting with. In just the first 3 months of 2025, 9 Cuban women lost their lives to violence outside of Cuba. That number challenges a common assumption, that crossing a border successfully and gaining legal status automatically means safety. The documented cases tell a different story. Sometimes, moving to the other side of a continent changes only the location, not the outcome. As of now, Carlos Aldana remains in custody in isolation, awaiting his preliminary court proceedings. What do you think? Does the current charge fit what the evidence shows, or should it be reconsidered? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if cases like this matter to you, make sure you're subscribed for the next true crime documentary.